And welcome to Writer's Life, a place where you get the sight, sound, smells, taste of my particular writer's life, where you get the truth about the writer's life, nothing but the truth. So help me God. Subscribe if you haven't already. Punch the like button. Tap the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on one single exciting video. Go to vincandrew.com. Pick up a whole bunch of new thrillers. A lot of new stuff coming out. And today I have Tom Avitabile, movie maker, best-selling author of the recently released, or it's really still a new release, Ask Not. If you're a Kennedy fan, you got to pick this up. Tom is back with me. This is his second shot with me.
Although you might not see me because you still have your share screen up.
I do have my share screen up. We're going to spring something on you right here, right now. This is a first time for us, this restream thing. But we're going to share something Tom is doing right now. I can get the video. We're just hoping we have audio as well. So just bear with us here.
And go to full screen on the thing there.
I'm going to go to full screen right now.
Gotta click. Here we go.
And I'm going to try this right now. Well, I love it. And I'm going to stop the screen share right this second. I don't know if everyone was able to hear that.
I didn't hear a thing, but it goes like this. Yeah, it's got a roar in there.
Yeah, so that's it. But anyway, you get the idea. Tom is starting to do these new things, and he's using them as, I would assume, we're going to talk about this, promo for his books. And when I can get my production act together and my technical act together, I'm going to have Tom back to show us a whole bunch of stuff. Excuse me. I love it though, and you can catch it right this second on LinkedIn, and you can also catch it on on my YouTube channel where this is being streamed live. So just click on it, and you can get the full experience. And hopefully, I'll work it out so that every time I do a video, it'll come up first. It'll be like the opening thing. It'll be like what do they call that, Tom, in showbiz when you have an opening song?
Oh, yeah.
What's that called?
Opening titles to a show.
Opening titles.
Yeah, you can even do cold opens. You can do all kinds of things now that you have this little island that introduces the show and handles the rudimentary stuff. Right. So yeah, this is actually I did this as a kind of demonstration, and if we had the video working, I would show you. I started a kind of new business. Now I'm an author, I'm a writer, I'm a book coach. I'm also a writer, director, producer, and I'm very fluid in production and video and stuff. So a good buddy of mine, Joe Bedell, who's a fantastic author, he's got 18 books out or something like that. He's amazing. He's a machine. He asked me a while back to do a little promo for one of his books, and that kind of grew. So using his books, I did some demos. And essentially, the nature of the business is for authors and publishers, if you just send me your cover, high res, even better. But if you just send me your cover, I can make a video out of it by reverse engineering some of the cover elements and creating a kind of pace and a beat. And then depending on what the cover inspires, it could be a simple basic deal, or it could elevate up with music and voiceover and special effects and things like that.
Yeah, you have price tiers. I saw that.
Yeah, and I'm trying to keep it low at $250 for the basic, and then as we step up the scale, or the writer or publisher wants to do something a little more energetic, it can go up from there. But the idea is a simple one-stop. All the author or publisher has to do is, if they have a high res of their book cover, most people do, send it to me, and I will vivisection it and then put it all back together magically in the art of video. If you saw the video, you'd see that there were quotes up there. Any review quotes can go with it. Any blurbs can be reinforced on the screen and brought attention to it. And this is particularly effective because Amazon has just opened up the ability for authors to do advertising videos. So this would be a very inexpensive entree into putting your book up there, but bringing it to life, so to speak.
Right.
And again, easy for the author and easy to click on, unless you have a show like this and you got to figure out how to make it all happen to a switcher you don't have. But,
right.
But for placing it on social media, and we can do square box, 1 by 1, or we can do it in 16 by 9 HD format, or both, as the needs demand. But it's been very successful, and Joe has a book promotion starting any minute now, and he's using that video for his book promotion.
Oh, that's excellent.
We're going to read the results of that, and if we have a case history number 1, that would also go out to bolster the idea. So It's a little side hustle. I'm still writing. Hey, look, there's the book there. Can I do this thing? Hold on, wait, I can do this thing. I think I can. Hold on. Can I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? No, I didn't do this yet. Hold on, I'm trying to do this.
Can you talk to us from New York?
That's in the book. You see how I did this? This is good, right?
Yeah, very good. Very good cover.
This is a good cover, right? Now, if I was cutting this cover up, like I could have the astronaut, come in, lay down. I can have the target reticule come up. I can have a gunshot in there. Do a lot of things. I didn't do it for my own book, but I did it for 3 other books. But the idea being, I take the cover as it appears and I work that. So I can't run a video here, but I can do this for some stupid reason. Anyway, back to live action. So the idea being that it's, again, a side hustle, but that book you just saw is out now. It's doing very well. I just had a great interview done. And this podcast, obviously, and I'm getting a lot of attention. So it's going well. And
have you gotten any Kennedy conspiracy theorists yelling at you or anything like that?
I got one guy who's not yelling so much, but looking for confirmation. Right. I'm starting to become the source authority for all JFK questions asked on Jeopardy, and people running stuff by me. So I've had a few of those, which is nice, and some people look, was it the Martians? Was it the guy on the moon? Was it Jackie? Was it some guy from a sewer? And you get all these questions. And although I am not the total expert on all the wacky, crazy conspiracies, I've been exposed to many of them. So I can usually lead somebody in the right direction or to some of the research I've done, which is pretty complete. I mean, not much new. Well, 2 new things happened actually in the last year, which is what caused me to write the book. One was the emergence of RFK Jr. saying he's got proof that the CIA killed his uncle. Right. And then the admissions of Paul Landis, who was a Secret Service agent assigned to Jackie, who came out with a revelation that totally turns, if true, and again, everything, I may have mentioned this before, there's only 2 things we know about the Kennedy assassination. The president's dead, and Ruby shot Oswald. After that, everything's up for grabs. So I have to always say, if true. So Paul Landis, Secret Service agent, came out and said he found the magic bullet on the rear deck and never went through anybody. And if that's the case, if true, then the whole Warren Commission is totally debunked. And the case is still open, if true. That was enough to get him all over the airwaves, to get him on PBS, to get him, in Vanity Fair magazine, and on and on and on. Because it was a very crazy claim, again, if true. So that was the 2 new things that spurred the book on and got me to rush it into production to get it out for November 22nd, which was the 60th anniversary of the JFK assassination.
Right.
So I've started a new genre called Presidents and Bullets, because my next book is Rawhide Down, which is a story told to me by a member of the Reagan administration about the day Reagan was shot.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It has more to do with America being within a heartbeat of nuclear war.
Wow.
And it is a chilling story, which I have done research and triangulated. And I'm going to say that they put away for 75 years a tape that was in the Situation Room that has all of this on it. But the guy who told me this story was a member of the administration. He was in the Situation Room. And he described things to me that no one could know, that I have found out through secondary sources, like a ever-running pool feed from the White House press room on that day, March 20th, 1981. And everything he told me that happened in the press room that was never broadcast is on this tape. So he was there. It's verified. And his story to me is verified. And he once got some members of the Reagan administration on the phone who spoke to me through his speakerphone in his office, just up to the line of top secret. And then they shut down, but they asked who's in the room, who's on the phone, what is the story? And he gave them kind of the thumbnail, who I was. And they went up to the limit, but they couldn't go further because they're still under the oath of secrecy. And believe it or not, there are patriots still in the world. So, but given that trajectory, so to speak, I triangulated the story. And so I'm writing a kind of a fictionalized account, and it's only fiction because that tape is not out. And I've done a FOIA request to get that tape released early, but it's in the National Archives. But people write books. So people in the administration have written books. And in those chapters, of course, that deal with the attempted assassination of a president, they're giving me insights that, again, were only relayed to me by someone in the room. Those insights are in their books, published books by well-known people, which confirm 40%, 60% of the story that I was told. So again, triangulation being the key here, to open source, which if you're into spooks and freaks, you know that open source means that it's stuff that's generally available and you're not violating any classified, rules or anything. Sure. So it's a fascinating story. And the after story is even bigger. And the after story is a kind of indictment of the whole thing. I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but we then let's just put it this way. The Cold War ended on March 20th, 1981. It went on for another 8 years by mutual agreement. And that's really the payoff pitch to this book, that it was over, totally over in March 21st, 1980. But the powers that be decided to let it keep going because this is a good thing we got going here on both sides.
Sure.
So it's not so much conspiracy as it is the way things actually work. So that's what
I'm just going to, well, so somehow, I forget the name of the guy who shot him, and wasn't he just released from prison? Hinckley, right. Mm-hmm. But I suppose, we're just talking one gunman, right? I mean, this isn't like...
Yeah, there's no conspiracy there. Hinckley, interestingly enough, I think he's out of jail now, and I think...
Yeah, they let him out.
And he's a guitar player. He's got a band. And the people are coming to see him. Because to show you how crazy things are.
Only in 2024 America.
Tell me about it.
What did Hinckley have to do with the Russians? Or the Soviets?
Nothing. Hinckley, as you know, fell in love with Jodie Foster from the movie Taxi Driver.
That's right.
And he was trying to get to Jodie. And she wouldn't, obviously, give him the time of day. So he figured if he assassinated a president, she'd talk to him. Right. Now, you can't make this up. But that's what the main story is on him. So here you got this, perfect assassination story, a loner, a loser, kind of guy who takes a gun.
Holden Caulfield.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So has nothing to do with the Russians. But what he did by putting stress on the system of government, was suddenly stressed because of the actions of this idiot. That was a stress test that we in some ways failed, and in some ways were lucky to get out of alive. And alive is the term, because we came within a heartbeat of nuclear war. And it may not be the heart you're thinking of, but it was a crazy day. And it has been, I'll put it to you this way. One of the key players in it, I reached out to a member of his family, and she reached out to him through her father, who was the brother of this guy. And when they were playing golf the following weekend, the brother asked his brother, who was in the Reagan administration, about what happened on that day. And the brother picked up a 9-iron and threatened his brother and said, "Don't you ever effing ask me about that again." And he threatened him with the 9-iron.
Wow.
Why? Because they all took an oath of secrecy.
Right.
And I know in today's blab, blab, blab podcast, get it out there, leads it bleeds world, that sounds impossible. But there are many people who are taking stuff to their grave, even to this day, because they signed an oath and it meant something to them.
Right.
So I'm kind of an oath buster in this regard, I guess. But again, I'm only using open sources and I'm triangulating in much the same way. And this actually ties in. Tom Clancy's first book was The Hunt for Red October.
Right.
And it was, a groundbreaking book for a lot of reasons. And when you say Tom Clancy, you have to go, ah, and hear that sound, the light.
For which he gave away just about all the rights and got like nothing for it. They're still fighting over it. I mean, that's for another podcast, but
anyway, of course. Well, his first publisher was Naval Press.
Yeah, it was like a small,
The book was like this thick. But it's a book that started a genre of which I have benefited. The techno thriller, although I bristle at that, because to me a book is something happens to someone, not computers or equipment, but that's the way it goes. So anyway, Clancy actually plays in my story, because Hunt for Red October is a part of this whole thing, which is, I know it sounds crazy, but it's definitely part of it. And if you believe Clancy, and I've spoken to his editor, it was all open source for him, including a video game about submarines. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that bubbling right under the surface. So
what I'm assuming is, so Reagan shot, and at the time, I remember I was a boy. I was like 14 or 15 years old, but at the time, it seemed like it wasn't so bad. It wasn't so, but he almost died, right? What
happened was he wasn't shot directly. A ricochet off the door lodged in his side, and nobody was aware of it.
Near the cardiac sac, right?
Yes. So what happened was they, and I think I've got this right, but I may have flipped it. They roll him in the ball. They throw him in the car. James Brady's lying on the street with a bullet hole in his head, his blood draining into it.
He's a mess. Yeah.
He was the press spokesperson. Another guy was shot, but they got the president out of there, and the Secret Service agents in the car made a call to bring him to, he was probably Walter Reed or Bethesda, one or the other. And along the way, he started coughing up blood. And that's when they ripped his jacket open, and they saw that he was hit on the side, and they immediately changed to what they call Medic 2. Medic 1, and I think I've got this right, Medic 1 was Walter Reed, Medic 2 was Bethesda. And the agents were savvy enough and knew enough that Bethesda had a better thoracic unit. So they changed mid-course and took him there. When they rolled him into the hospital, he was alert and alive and everything else, and he even joked with them. He said, I hope you're all Republicans. He said that.
You're all Republicans.
Yeah. And when they got his wife on the phone, he says, honey, I forgot the duck. So he was, he wasn't in pain or agony.
Right.
But he was bleeding internally, and he went through surgery. And while he was going through surgery, he was obviously out of commission. At that time, the vice president was George Bush, who would later go on to become a one-term president right after. But George Bush, who's got a great history if you follow the JFK assassination.
I know. I was going to say, didn't he shoot Kennedy?
Yeah, well, he was. Some people say he was there in Dallas, but you can't find proof of it. But he did actually was involved with some of the characters involved in the assassination theories.
Yes, head of CIA.
Yeah, and mostly through Zapata Oil. Zapata Oil was his oil company.
Right.
And Zapata was actually one of the code names that they used for some of the CIA operations. And George Bush was in the CIA, and he was one of the architects, if not one of the executors, of the Bay of Pigs invasion, which, if you remember history, was a CIA planned operation that Kennedy did not support.
Right.
And in that non-support, it gave the CIA a reason to hate his guts. And also a lot of patriotic Cuban Americans who went back to take the island. And when Kennedy did not support them, they got cut to pieces and ribbons that were captured. And a lot of the Cuban community didn't like Kennedy either for that, because he didn't help at all. And those guys got killed. So the whole idea being that Bush now is the vice president. Reagan's code word for the Secret Service was rawhide. And the reason why it was rawhide was his show was actually called Death Valley Days, with Ronald Reagan. But they couldn't fit that on the National Assets Monitor, which was, green type, so many characters. So they came up with rawhide being another show, which actually had
brought to you
what was that?
General Electric Company in Schenectady, New York.
You got that right. Military contractors that they are. Anyway, so rawhide was his thing. And George Bush's Secret Service code name was Treasure Ship. So George Bush was down in Fort Worth, literally on the back of a flatbed truck, addressing the Fort Worth Oil Men's Association, talking to them about oil, talking to them about, Texas tea, pure gold coming up from the ground. And when the National Assets Monitor, which is the reason for the title of my book, the guy who told me the story said he's sitting in a cabinet member's office, and there's a monitor that's National Assets, and it's all green. And then all of a sudden, the top one, rawhide, goes rawhide down. And that was the signal that the president was no longer, in perfect shape. Right. He was down. So rawhide down became the immediate trigger. And at that moment, a whole bunch of operating procedures go into effect. And one of them is they run up on the stage and they grab George Bush in the middle of a sentence, and they just manhandle him off the stage, throw him into the back of the limousine to get him to Air Force Two in record time. They drove so fast that they almost killed a Fort Worth policeman at the corner of the car, knocking him over on his motorcycle. They rush him to the airport. I don't know if it was Love Field, but it probably was Love Field or whatever. Anyway,
get him in the air, right?
No, it wouldn't be Love Field. But here's the idea: they got to get him 10,000 feet, which is called nuclear safe.
Right. They want to get him in the air. Yeah.
They got to get him in the air, because if it's a preemptive strike, if it's a decapitation, if the enemy has killed the president or tried to kill the president, they may be following up with a nuclear strike, figuring that with the decapitation, the panic of the United States, they would never be able to push the button to retaliate. We get them with their pants down. So they rush George. Two things happen at that moment, by the way. They rush George Bush to the Air Force Two. They throw him on the plane. The plane takes off literally from the taxiway without even looking for permission. It's just got to get in the air, and everybody else get out of the way. Air traffic controllers are scrambling. And the other thing that happens is the pilot of Air Force Two puts a patch over his eye. The patch is so while he's flying, if there's an airburst, a nuclear airburst in front of him,
he's not completely blinded. It'll
burn out the eye he's using, but he can switch to the eye with the patch. Yeah. That's where we're living here, Yeah. So all this happens, and he's flying back to Washington, D.C. And meanwhile, nobody knows what the hell's going on. And that's where my story really is. That's the meat of the story.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah. And the other thing I should add is the Reagan administration at that point was only 2 months old.
Right. It was brand new, right?
So,
Remember that
procedures
much.
and things like that hadn't been developed.
Right.
And also, he had the Sacramento Mafia, they called it. The people who loved Reagan called him Dutch. That was his name. And Dutch, when he became president, only brought the people he trusted because he was the governor of California after he was an actor.
Right.
And somewhere between being an actor and being the governor of California, he was the president of the Screen Actors Guild.
That's right.
So he had union power, he had political power. He became governor, and then as governor, as you know, he became president. So he just brought everybody from Sacramento with him, his best friends, among which his probably bestest bestie, what BFF was Caspar Weinberger.
Yeah. Caspar Weinberger claimed he was Der Führer now, right? That
Say
much
that
I
again?
remember. Caspar Weinberger, in the midst of this, didn't he declare that he was Der Führer of the United States at this point?
No, but it's close. Where you're going is close. There was
He's
another
like, I'm in
gentleman.
charge.
Yeah, that was another gentleman, and
Oh, okay.
that's part of the story because that actually was one of the crazy moments in history. That person said that because he was relating to the NCA,
What's the
and
NCA?
the NCA is the National Command Authority,
Okay.
which is not the succession to the president. The National Command Authority is set up by each administration to have they could call up and say, "Hey, Vincent, you're on the NCA. You're number 26."
Oh,
And you say, "What does that mean?" That means if the 25 people ahead of you are instant crispy critters because of a nuclear attack, you get the button.
okay.
Okay,
Does it
you
pay
get
well?
to authorize the attack.
Yeah.
It could be anybody. The president can determine anybody he wants. It could be the dog catcher. It could be his maid. So the NCA is different than the presidential order of succession, which
This is
obviously is
fascinating. I
the
didn't
vice
realize.
president, speaker of the House, pro temp, and then defense, state, and it goes down to cabinet until they get to the dog catcher.
Right.
So anyway, what that gentleman was saying was actually quoting the NCA, and because of what had happened minutes before.
Okay.
Because minutes before, the young puppies in the Reagan administration didn't know what the hell to do. And he happened to have been a former chief of staff in the Nixon administration. So he knew where all the buttons were. And literally, there was one button that these guys didn't know what it was. And they pressed it, and it was the wrong button. Okay. Which is the beginning of this whole story.
Okay.
He knew other buttons, which were the communications with the now acting president of the United States, who was on Air Force Two. But there was no secure line of communication to him that the Russians might not hear, except for one machine, which was like an Etch-a-Sketch. It was a pen with wires on it. And as you wrote, the wires rewrote it on an identical machine in the Situation Room. And that was encrypted. All the other means of communication on this plane, tail number 27,000, which was a 707 that Kissinger took to China during the Nixon administration. And this guy who was the chief of staff in the Nixon administration would communicate with Kissinger all the time on this device. Nobody else knew how to work it. So they said, "Hey, you sit here, you run this." And he did. That's where we are.
Early form of email, right? Something like that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was direct messaging,
right,
through a cryptic device that actually had a pen that you wrote on, and a pen somewhere else did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
You went squiggle, squiggle, squiggle. The machine went squiggle, squiggle, squiggle.
Right.
So it was, short-lived technology, but because it was machine code, it was encrypted.
Right.
Nobody would. You're just hearing noises if you ever got the radio, so you don't know what it is. Sure. Anyway, so these are all the little footings that happened in the story that culminated in there would have been no March 21st that anybody remembered because we'd all be dead. Everybody.
Very, very fascinating.
Yeah.
Very fascinating.
You want to talk about writing?
We just, you know what? I think that's the perfect place to end it because we're at a half an hour. Big Philly, thanks for chiming in. Yes, the mainstream media tells us there are no deep states. Bullshit. Got to watch this tomorrow, but George H.W. and his CIA boys tried to whack the Gipper. Matt Maitland, love the channel. Thank you, Matt. Tom, where can we find you, your new venture? Looking forward to this new book. Do you have a title yet?
It's called Rawhide Down.
Rawhide, you mentioned it. Okay, great. Rawhide Down. You can't do better than that.
No, come on. It's like right out of history.
Yeah.
Well, anybody's interested in Ask Not, you can go to www. You got that? www. asknotbook.com. So it's Ask Not, the name, and the word.
It'll be below here.
Oh, yeah. Geez, there it is. Look at that. Wow. asknotbook.com. And my website is my name, tomavitabile.com. And that's more of a blog kind of site, but there's always interesting and fun things there. And that's it. And Vince, thank you so much, for this airtime. And hopefully when we get all the video worked out, I can show you some examples and we can look at other fun videos.
Yeah. When I finally get my podcasting video or my podcasting technical side of things running.
Well, I can help with that, I have the technology.
All right, Tom.
All right,
great talking to you, and I appreciate your time, and good luck finishing the book, and
thank you.
I will talk to you soon, and I can't wait for you to come back.
6 to 8 over and out.
All right, and everybody else, ciao ciao.